Welcome back, friends. As you we are in Unit 3, and last class we have discussed about a few important, the concepts that basically how you can define the customer defined service standards and how we can modify the process and the technology in order to, help it. Then we have seen what are the strategies that can be used, to match the demand with the capacity. In continuation with that, right? So today we'll try to learn, or today we'll try to see that the second strategy where how can you adjust the capacity to match the demand. In the previous class, videos we have seen that how we can manage or how can you prepone or postpone the demand to match the existing the capacity. Here the other way around, right? So if we tried all the strategies to postpone or prepone the demand, still if the demand is there, then okay, let us see how we can match the capacity to match the demand. So look at the slide here and look at the left hand side. When the demand is too high, what we can do? Those are some strategies which has been listed there. You can the stretch the time of the labor, facilities and equipments temporarily, right? So basically I can stretch my employees time. Obviously when we are stretching the employees time, there will be stretching of facilities and the equipments. Or I can use the part time the employees, whether I can take it from the outside, or I can subcontract it the part-time employees. Then I can cross train my own employees so that the employees can be used at the different departments wherever the capacity is being the needed. And the simplest and the most easiest is to ask your employees to work overtime. Whatever the due compensation is there, that we can provide and we can ask them. Or certain activities, this is also very much common. Certain activities we can subcontract or outsource so that I can meet the demand when it is too high, so that I can adjust the capacity. See, all these capacities are adjustment of the capacities are the temporary. Again, it comes with respect to industries and how easy is that to add the capacity. Certain industries, it's very much easy to add the capacity where the skill required is, the less. But where the skill required is high, or if you want any specific skills, it's slightly difficult for the organizers to add the capacity, temporarily adding the capacities. Now, look at the right hand side of the slide there. That's what you can see. If the demand is too, again, too low, there are two options only, right? One, the demand is too high, so we can implement the strategies what we have discussed so far. If the demand is too low, then I think we can see these, the options which are available for the service provider. Maybe I can schedule for downtime during the periods of low demand, or else you can see the many seasonal and other, the organizations. Generally, I do take uh, the maintenance activities or the renovations activities during the demand, low periods of the demand, when the demand is low. Or I can schedule the vacations for the employees, or I schedule the training for my employees. And least recommended is the laying off of the employees, but this is the last thing that any service organization or to any organization to that extent will do, laying off of the employees, because it's having it's having its own advantages and the disadvantages. That is the last option, inevitable. If that is there, I can lay off the employees, or I can modify or move the facilities and the equipment. These are the some strategies where organization can use when adjusting the capacity, right? So adjusting the demand, that's the different things. That's what we have seen in the previous video. So here, these are the strategies the companies can either increase or decrease the capacity, in tune with the demand what is prevailing for their, the. Right, that's what is being listed in this slide. The same thing what we have discussed, this so far. But generally, what happens is, I do have go with mix of these two strategies. I can just see whether Can I influence the demand? If I am influencing the demand, to what extent I can influence the demand? So then I'll adjust my capacity. If demand is is not being influenced, and it's difficult for us to adjust the prepone or postpone the demand, then maybe I might think of increasing my capacity itself, where I can really match the demand with the with the capacity, either in any form that's discuss. But when it comes to the services, what we think of is the yield, right? So profit in other sense, which is really the ratio of what you can say actual revenue divided by potential revenue, right? So when you look in here, just see the definition of the yield management, right? So yield management is the term that has become attached to a variety of methods. Some are very sophisticated, matching demand and supply in capacity constrained services. Using yield management models, organizations can find best balance at a particular point of in time among when the prices have been they changed. That's where, right, where the every organization is trying to find or trying to make their maximum yield as much as possible. That's, as I said, it's a ratio of actual revenue by the potential the revenue, right? So that's the reason maybe certain industries you find the executives will be always behind how can I maximize my yield. But there are some challenges. That's what you can see in managing the yield. Where I may lose the competitive focus in terms of thinking only how much the I can get it over whatever the prevailing the facilities are there, or I can make it expected revenue. How can I increase the uh, expected revenue? And in sense of that, maybe the customer alienation may happen, or might be there are some employee morale problems, because you will be pressing them on to achieve the targets more whatever is being given, or might be come out with incompatible incentive and reward system, right? So, or it might result in the lack of employee training. So that's where the always in managing the yield, right? But always the service firm will be looking for how much really I'm getting in order to maximize my yield, right? How can I reduce the numerator there, right? In actual ratio, right? Actual revenue divided by expected revenue, right? So now we'll try to see something about the the waiting line, the strategies. Even though sometimes it's not possible to manage the capacity to match the demand, or it might happen vice versa, right? It may be too costly. For example, most of the health clinics would not find it economically feasible and add additional facilities or physicians to handle the peaks in demand during the the winter or the season, and reduce the facilities and the physicians during the off season. It's very difficult one, right? Maybe it is true with the many of the service firms, organizations, where it is we need to add the human power and the facilities or the equipment. So in this case, what happens is the waiting line really happens, right? So people are coming, their customers are coming, and they keep on waiting. For most of the service organizations, waiting customers are fact of life. At some point, waiting line can occur over the telephone, right? Maybe, and in person. Maybe when you are going to the bank, post office, hotels, physician office, lawyers, consultants, waiting line might happen also with inline, and in person also. Or waiting can occur even with the service transactions through the mail. That means delays in the mail, or the order delivery, or backlogs of correspondence on the the service providers desk where they are there. But we can employ certain the strategies in order to reduce, or how can I make the customers who are waiting have their time, have the happy time, and might be satisfied with whatever the service we have been giving. For that, right, the first thing what the organizations can concentrate is that, is there any operations where I can modify so that I can reduce the waiting line system, right? Any processes or any inefficiencies or the corrections that need to be made, that can be made by the organizations in order to provide, reduce the waiting lines. Or else, you can try to see and adjust the queuing system only. Either you can have the multiple, the queuing systems where you find it in many of the banks, reservation counters of railways, bus stations, or the banks, or whatever it is. Or you can find, the single queue in some of the banks and other service organizations. You will find it. There will be a single queue who will be going to the multiple service providers. Or you can have a token system, right? This are, not generally seen in order to, the give a better experience for the service, the customers who are availing the services. Or maybe the better one, what you can say, is establish the reservation process. Maybe certain industries it is possible, right? Like, the consultancies, or maybe hospitals, or maybe health clubs, or health care. Certain industries are possible wherever, you have a scope of establishing the reservation system. I can really establish the reservation system, and we can make, reduce the waiting lines, or we can reduce the waiting period for the customers. Or else, many companies will do this, right? So what, they can differentiate the waiting customers. That's what you can see. So either you can divide or differentiate the customers based on the importance. Say for example, you might make a separate waiting area for the who are frequent customers, or who might be who might spend a large amount for your company. So you can differentiate that based on the importance of the customer. That means how important is the customer to the organization. So you can give a priority for them to avail the services, or you can have provide a separate, the waiting line for them, so that they can finish off the service and they can go back. And next thing is, you can, differentiate the waiting line customers based on the emergency of the service which is to be needed. This is very commonly you can see in the healthcare, industries, wherever you require emergency services, emergency health, the attention. So then I think, give them, the first chance to meet the doctors or the physicians, so that they will avail the services which is very much needed. That's depending on the urgency of the job. Or maybe in certain industries you find, you can divide, the customers who are who require a shorter duration of the service or the job get the priority through the express lines, right? So where, they may go much faster or they earlier than the persons who are having, the longer duration of the service transaction. Or you can design a system that, somebody who pays the extra amount or the premium amount, whatever, you can leave them early, right? Maybe you can just see that in the first class, the customers on the airlines, you know separate check-ins and other things. Overall, what we need to do is how we can make the waiting is fun for the the customers, or we find that, at least it is tolerable. If not, it is, intolerable. At least make them tolerable, comfortable when they wait in the queue. But there are some issues, right? So we need to consider, in making waiting time more tolerable for the customers. And it is true that, right, unoccupied time feels longer than occupied time. That's what you can say, that when the customers are unoccupied, they will likely, to be bored, and will notice the passage of time is more than when they have something to do. That's very much true, right? Very much true, right? So just take an example of, the signal lights, right? 30 seconds in the signal lights, will really tell us how much difficult is that, how or else how torturing is that, waiting for something. That's only the signals will be around 30 seconds. If it is 60 seconds or more than 60 seconds, you might find the people bypassing the signal and going away to their places. Fine. So that's the reason what we find, in many restaurants when you are waiting, so they give the menu book, so that I can I don't feel the time of waiting. Or you might go to the dentist, or you might go to the hospitals. Maybe you might find there's the receptions, the magazines, and the papers, right? So where they can really pass the time, without noticing it, or making their waiting time much happier and better. Maybe even you can see displays, TV displays, hoardings, or it might be some dances and all you can see, in order to make it the waiting time is more fun. Or you see, the pre-process waits feel longer than in-process waits. So we are in the process, right? So then we never feel. That's what the classic example you find. When we are there in the waiting for the doctor, we feel it's really a the lot of time we have been waiting. But when the doctor the has the medical checkups, we never feel, even though we are 1 hour there inside, 1.5 hour there inside, we never feel that. That's what it says, right? So pre-process waits feel longer than in-process waits. When maybe the anxiety makes waits they seem longer, and when the customer fear that they have been forgotten, or do not know how long they will have to wait, they become anxious, right? And this anxiety can increase the negative impact of the waiting. And anxiety also results in customers are forced to choose a multiple lane situation, and they discover that they have chosen the wrong line. Right. So here we need to inform the customers, will be informed, right? What really, how much the time really it's been takes, right? So then uncertain waits seems to be longer though than known, and the finite waits, and unexplained waits seem longer than explained waits, right? So when you know that, when you are going there, you know that, right? So somebody explains you, right, how much time does the entire process takes, then I might be mentally prepared, right? So where I feel that it's not much, I've been since I've been waiting. Or unfair waits feel longer than equitable waits. That means you have been standing in a queue, or you are there in the waiting line from hours together, and somebody bypasses you and they goes inside. There I feel that it's an unfair wait, right? Where the explanation is being needed. Customer should be the informed to make those the decisions. Right? So, or it may find the more valuable the service, the longer the customer wait. That's obviously true. Service is more valuable in terms of monetary or non-monetary benefits what the customers are getting. Then might be I'm ready to wait for much longer the time. And even this is also true where solo waits feel longer than group waits. If I'm alone and waiting, I'll definitely feel that I've been waiting for this so many days, or maybe hours together, if I wait for 10-15 minutes. And there you find some strategies of the companies where they made sure that there is a group formation, and they waited. So these are the certain issues. So now finally we look at how what are the reasons or for the gap 2. We have seen the reasons for gap 1. Now this is gap 2. Here first portion is okay, understanding the customer expectations, and how company perceives the customer expectations. So this gap happens because you find what actually the customer perceives about design and service standards, and how the management perceives it, right? Perceives the customer expectations. That gap will really lead us to this gap number 2 in the service. Can look at those the reasons. There are mainly 3 reasons what we find. One is service itself is very poorly designed, and I'm not concentrating much on customer driven service standards rather than company driven service standards. I pay little attention, or there is an absolute absence of customer driven standards. And the third one is again important. What you can see in appropriate physical evidence and servicescapes are not there for the customers to say that that the service standards what we are following are basically with respect to uh, you know the customer driven service standards, right? So poor design might be because unsystematic new service development process, so where you are not having a scientific way of designing the new services, like what we call as NPD in manufacturing, right? In physical goods, vague and underdefined service designs, failure to connect the service designs to service positioning. That's the problem with the communication and understanding it. And absence of customer driven standards, maybe because of lack of customer driven service standards, or absence of the process management focus on customer requirements, where my entire process is not been that much focused to get the customer requirements, and absence of formal process for setting service quality goals, right? So these are the reasons why it's customer driven service, absence of customer driven service standards. Then the last one you can see the physical evidence, where me as a service provider fail to develop tangibles in line with the customer expectations, what the customer basically are expecting. Are we building a confidence in the customers by designing a right kind of tangibles, or service scape design that does not meet the customer and employee needs also even, and inadequate maintenance and updating of the service scape. So this really makes us the reasons for existence of the gap 2 in the service. Now, we'll just see. This is a topic which you all know, and I'll not concentrate much on this since you all have learned this in the strategic management. Right? So, leadership, what is vision, what is mission, and all, how the vision and visions are framed in tune with you know the company, and how the company is being designed, or the company's overall activities or the culture in the company is designed to meet the mission and the vision statements. That's what you can see here. Okay, that's all you say. Then lastly, we are just trying to understand offensive and the defensive marketing. This also the concept that you have already learned in first semester in marketing subject. The same thing here applies to services also. Right? What is this offensive marketing? Basically, attracts more customers and the better customers, and it tries to improve its reputation through higher market shares and price premiums. But the other one is the defensive marketing strategy, where I am trying to retain the existing customers, and long-term customers are more profitable. Then I work on giving the better services at the lower cost. And this is under the philosophy of the saying that the attracting new customers is far difficult and costlier than retaining the existing customers. That's also we have seen my the earlier videos. It's like we have seen that in the bucket theory. It's something which has been the holes in the bucket. Then you need to pour that much of water to maintain the level, particular level in the bucket, right? So these holes are like lost customers for the company. Then you need to bring in a new customers, new materials, everything is new. Then I think you have to they pay more than what is being really required. So that's what is defensive marketing, right? So you can just see this where how can you apply the service quality in an offensive and defensive marketing strategies, right? So where defensive marketing strategy believes in customer retention, that they do it by lowering the cost and maybe by increasing the purchases, volume of purchases, then giving the price premiums, and that obviously that happens with word of mouth, leads to margins, and that leads to profit. And offensive here is an aggressive, where I'm trying to look for the new and new customers. That is through increasing the market share, reputation, and providing the price premium. And because of that, also I might get the profit. That's how it's depend on the company philosophy. We cannot question each company. Why are you doing like this? Fine. So, friends, here is the end of this unit. We'll meet again back at the start of the fourth unit. Thank you.